be like, hey guys, remember when we said Tenet didn't make any money? Like we were kind of wrong about that, but no one's doing it. But I guess too, when we think about the Prestige, when I think about the Prestige, I'm not thinking about Bale's performance. I'm not thinking about Rebecca Hall, saying like, you said this today, I believe you today, not yesterday. I don't think about Bale's reaction to when the kid says, where's the bird's brother? And Bale is just stumped. I mean, it's fine acting. When I do this, I think about the clones. I think about the top the
Yeah.
top hats. I think about the who was who and when, and just when was when and who was who and what was what. And that I guess whenever I think about that, I always just think about the twist. When I think about Dark Knight, I guess I do think about Heath Ledger, I guess. But when I think about Tenet, I think about the costumes and the suits and the action. So I think that does take away from some of the actors as well, because when there's so much spectacle, I do think it's tough to hang in there on screen. And I want to say something though. I mean, I'm all for blockbuster filmmaking and people winning Oscars in blockbusters. Like I felt like Ford versus Ferrari, Matt Damon and Christian Bale probably should have won something. Like Ford versus Ferrari has made bank. Everyone loves it, but I still feel like it's underrated. But I like for the Oscars and Golden Globes, I like seeing the smaller movies win because I feel like that gives them more. I don't know. I don't want a $1 billion movie winning Best Actor and Picture. Like I was happy when Hurt Locker beat Avatar because people talk about Hurt Locker now. Like I like when that happens in award shows. So that I guess I complain about it. I say that blockbusters don't get nominated. Bill Murray doesn't get nominated, but I'm also cool with the little fellas, the lesser known movies making, winning. But
yeah, for sure.
That's
and
neither here nor there. But
yeah, and listen, and this is another the Prestige is another example. It doesn't matter. This movie doesn't need Oscars in order to be rewatchable, in order to be look at that IMDb score. It's number 47, I think, out of the top 250. I did read somewhere that it's one of his lower Rotten Tomato scores, which is a little bit surprising.
Lower. Yeah, I think Tenet's lower, but it's one of the lower. But hey, so I just wanted to do something real quick where I'm not trying to like dogpile on people who didn't like this film because I don't think that's fair. Everyone has their own opinion. But there are, at 76%, I don't know. This movie feels more like an 88%. So I'm reading some of these reviews, and like some of these people say that like there's nothing but shattered illusions. They're saying it does not impress as a magical act. Like you're never particularly entertained. And then like it says it leaves the viewer confounded and confused. But while watching this movie and after the reveal, and like someone called it like risible inanity, like they're saying that this movie is just total, like it has no direction. But were you confused at the end of this movie? Is there anything confounding about the Prestige? Because
I don't think so, but this seems to be the common criticism, I think, actually, that this movie maybe gets, but I think that Nolan gets sort of in general, where, again, for all that you and I are saying, we love the fact that he takes you on a journey and there's twists and turns along the way. And I mean, this film itself is, the whole story is premised on the idea of the magic trick itself, that the story itself has a pledge, a turn, and a prestige, a big reveal at the end. And the common criticism that I hear about Nolan is just that people seem to think, like in the third act a lot of the time, that the explanations that are given for the things that are going on, that there's like plot holes or something, or that the explanations aren't robust enough to truly or that they're contradictory in some way. Like this is the thing that people sort of said about like Inception, for example. They're like, well, if these are the rules of this world, you can't then in the third act like violate some of those rules to resolve the storyline. I'm not sure that I buy that as much. I mean, again, there's and again, even with magic in general, there's an element where there needs to be a suspension of disbelief. You've got to want to be taken on this journey and want to, I guess, kind of get lost in the story a little bit and allow Nolan. Does this make sense? What
absolutely.
I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, and if you think about it too, I mean, I think we're all guilty of it sometimes, just like analyzing a movie to death. But Nolan is like what he said in an interview was that when you see a woman sawed in half at a magic show, you know that she is not being sawed in half. You're just there to see the trick. You don't even want to know the trick. You're just there to be entertained. Like, a woman didn't get separated from her torso, didn't get separated from her, upper half of her body. So it's just, you're there to be entertained. And I think with a lot of his movies, and I've been guilty of it before, and I've made some data articles on his movies, but more lovingly, I guess. It's just, I think he wants the audience to just sit back, relax, and watch a gigantic IMAX movie. Like, he doesn't, and I think with Tenet, with all these, I think sometimes people get lost in like, when was this? When was that? When was this? So if you're doing that during a magician show, like, are you trying to enjoy it, or are you trying to purposely wreck your fun? Because I think what Nolan's saying is that you should just sit back, relax, and let this dark theater, large auditorium with speakers, just engage with it. Don't try to figure out the act. Does that make sense? Just
100%. And
yeah.
I think the phrase you just said, engage with it, is the perfect phrase, because I think to a certain degree he's exploring some deep philosophical ideas in a lot of his films, and he's not necessarily coming out and saying that he has all of the answers, and his characters oftentimes don't come away with all of the answers. Leonardo DiCaprio at the end of Inception, we're not 100% sure whether he's still dreaming. Is he back in his real life? That the story is unresolved to a certain degree. And, some people, again, like try to pick that apart and go, well, when he was dreaming, it was this, and now he's awake, and so it's that, and there's contradictions. I think it's more the idea that Nolan is trying to explore these ideas. He's trying to have you engage with him at this sort of deep philosophical level. And just because all of the questions don't get answered and he doesn't necessarily spell it out in a super tight, concise way by the end of the story, it doesn't mean that, to me, that doesn't make it less enjoyable. I'm okay coming out of the theater with questions and feeling confused and, looking up. I was watching Tenet and I was looking up, that square puzzle thing that the movie was premised around. I can't remember what it's called. Yeah. I was doing research like a week later, like trying to figure out what this was all about. And so to me, that's one of the enjoyable parts of these Nolan films, is coming out with my head spinning a little bit and going, man, I need to look into this and kind of learn a little bit more about some of these different ideas, or the different theories of time that are pervasive throughout all of his movies. And, I love looking into that stuff. I watched Interstellar. I was reading about black holes and theoretical physics. Again, the movie doesn't spell it all out for you, how that all necessarily works, because we don't know how all of that stuff necessarily works. But the idea of engaging with that and thinking about that and building a story around some of these ideas, to me, it's what makes Nolan so enjoyable. But I understand, I guess it's not for everybody.
And I like the questions you had, because I did the same thing. But I do think there are movies that have you leaving the theater asking good questions, and I think there's movies that have you leaving the theater answering bad questions. So with Prestige, you're wondering, like, okay, so which one was it who lived? Which Bale was it? And which clone died with Jackman? Like, when did he realize? Like, those are good questions to go research and discuss. But then there's a movie like The Dark Knight Rises where he has a nuclear bomb, drops it off in the sea, somehow ends up in Italy. Like, that's a bad question. Does that make sense? Like, there's like good questions and bad questions to ask. And I think Prestige makes you ask the good questions. I think Interstellar makes you ask the good questions. This is random, but Prometheus, that movie, Megan and I sat there for 2 hours one night going, did the aliens want to destroy Earth? Because, like, Jesus Christ, did they create Earth? Were they on the way to kill Earth? Like, what? Like, we got really out there with those questions. But I think that's kind of like what's neat about Nolan. And I guess this is a random story, but I went to go see Tree of Life with Megan. It's Terrence Malick.
Terrence Malick. I've never seen it. Yeah.
One of my favorite directors. And when we were in it, there were people like scoffing and they were laughing, and it was at an art house theater too, which kind of blows my mind. But when we walked out, I mean, it's a movie basically about Sean Penn thinking about his past on the anniversary of his brother's death. Mm-hmm. And that's it. He's just thinking about what is life? Where are we? And a lot of the views that we get of Brad Pitt, of Jessica Chastain, are sort of wisp-like and dreamlike, because when you look back at the past, they are not full memories. They are wisps. They are dreamlike. They are not complete, right? They're formed in your memory. But then when people walked out of Tree of Life, they're like, so is he saying that life is this with that? I'm like, no, it's just he's looking back. I don't know. So I guess with me, when I engage with movies, I'm not asking like, what is life? What is this question? I guess I let it wash over me, and I see it. I see like the plot at like the base of what it is. And I guess for me, the Prestige is about how just two men, one with infinite resources, another one without, in competition with each other, making each other great, but also ruining each other's lives. Like, but that's what it is. These two men drove each other to greatness, but then they also were each other's downfall. And I thought that was kind of interesting now about how, the different dynamics between two men, and just the magicians had those same feuds. I mean, there were feuds going on in the book that this film was based on. So I guess for me, this is about two men who sacrifice everything, who aren't happy with what they have, who are almost evil enough to marry a woman and then torment her every other day with someone who doesn't love her. It's about drive. It's about what happens with that, what happens with obsession. But it's also told in a way that's just really enjoyable.
Yeah.
So I think, you know what, you nailed it, Phil. There's big questions in there about obsession and how far we're willing to go, and how that can, like, kill people, and how that can end, the selfishness that comes with that. But then it's also a really enjoyable film that has 8.5 on IMDb from over 1 million votes.
Yeah.
So I think it's more impressive, I think, than people give it credit for, because just the different, like the editing in this movie. Like, I think they said there's like 87 jump cuts in this film that goes around with the different time frames, and just the way that they torment each other. I mean, the bullet catch that comes back to haunt them. I mean, every little thing that they talk about, the Langford double, and which brother was it? And it all comes back to the hat. I mean, we see the hats in the beginning. It's a bold choice. Now, I guess, I don't know. I want to see how you feel about this, Phil, because I think Nolan fans, and I think you're just about the perfect Nolan fan, because you're not blindly worshiping this guy. You're just a fan of his craft and you enjoy his films. But then there's other people that just are saying, like, they're like, The Dark Knight is the greatest movie ever made. And I guess sometimes I react a little strongly to Nolan fans, but it's not Nolan's fault. I know it's not right of me to think that, but I guess sometimes, what am I trying to say?
He's
Nolan's
polarizing. He's polarizing. There's no doubt. Like, people are super, think that he can do no wrong. And then there's other people that, for whatever reason, like, think that the guy sucks, which I just don't understand at all. I think I read something, it was an old stat, but it was something like 7 out of his 10 at the time that he'd made 10 films, 7 out of 10 were in the IMDb top 250. I mean, the guy is a phenomenal filmmaker, but at the same time, I'm not going to sit here and say that everything that he touches turns to gold. I mean, I'm not a big Insomnia guy. Even Dunkirk, I thought,
Wasn't that
was
your
like
high school
okay.
yearbook quote? Wasn't that your high school yearbook quote? Not a big Insomnia guy.
Not a big Insomnia guy. It also didn't help when Dunkirk. So my story with Dunkirk was my wife and I went on a cruise. I actually, at my corporate job, won, a top performance award, and they sent us on a cruise. And I'd never been on a cruise before. And before leaving, I sort of said, so how bad, like, I get a bit motion sick, like, with the waves, is being on a cruise that bad? And I talked to lots of people that had been on, my parents had gone on, something like 25 cruises, and they said, oh, no, you won't even notice it. It's like walking around in a house. Like, it's completely normal. Well, the first night we were there, I'm literally rocking side to side going, I'm not supposed to notice this. Like, I literally felt like we were going to tip over. And so my wife had the same thing. Like, we both got super motion sick, and we were on this cruise in January, which I guess is a rough time of year, for waves and whatnot. And so we're, sailing on these rocky seas, just like completely sick the whole time. And so my wife and I spent most of the cruise just sort of like laying in bed, trying not to be sick. And we watched a whole bunch of Fast and Furious movies and just like watched movies basically the entire time. And we watched Dunkirk, which is a movie essentially all about sailing on the, you know, rough open seas. And so maybe that detracted a little bit from our Dunkirk experience. The fact that we felt like we were on one of the ships in the film.